The night was supposed to be flawless. That's the first thing you need to understand before anything else. The Governor Awards isn't just another Hollywood ceremony. It's the ceremony. The one where legends are honored, careers are elevated, and reputations are carved into stone. It's the night where the air itself feels heavier because the entire room is filled with people whose names can change the direction of cinema with a single decision. It's elegance. It's precision. It's power. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. But on this particular night in 2025, something happened that no one could have predicted. Something that instantly turned the glamorous ballroom at the Dolby Theater into the most talked-about scene in Hollywood. A moment so tense, so unexpected, that even the most seasoned Oscar-winning actors found themselves whispering, "Did that really just happen?" And it all started with a single question. What was Meghan Markle doing at the Governor Awards? Not why was she late? Not who did she come with? Not even what is she wearing? No, the question that froze the room, that stopped forks mid-air, that caused Leonardo DiCaprio to whip his head around with a look of total disbelief was far more alarming. How did she get in at all? Hold that thought for a second, because before we unravel how the Duchess of Sussex walked into one of the most exclusive Hollywood events of the year, despite not being an invited guest, you need to understand the rules of this night. The Governor Awards has one of the strictest entry protocols in the industry. No +1s unless approved weeks in advance. No surprise guests. No walk-ins, not even for billionaires or A-listers. If your name isn't on the list, security doesn't let you cross the carpet. So how did Meghan do it? And more importantly, why did it make Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Cruise so furious that they confronted her openly, loudly, and in front of some of the biggest names in the world? Let's step into that room together. Let's feel the tension. Let's hear the whispers. Let's understand what was happening in those first few seconds, because that's where the story begins. Picture it. The ballroom is glowing with warm light. Gold fixtures reflect off champagne glasses. Conversation floats through the air. Soft, measured, elegant. Directors, producers, actors, and Academy insiders mingle in carefully curated clusters. Everyone is polished. Everyone is poised. Everyone knows they're part of something meaningful. Then a subtle shift. A ripple. A tiny disturbance in the flow of perfection. A few eyes turn toward the main entrance. A woman steps in, and the ripple becomes a wave. Someone gasps softly. Someone else murmurs, "No way. Not tonight. She didn't. She can't be here. It's Meghan Markle." And the room instantly changes temperature. At first, nobody moves. Nobody approaches. Nobody even pretends to continue their conversations, because everyone knows she is not on the list. Now, the audience should ask themselves a very important question here. How does someone walk into a space like this without clearance? Without credentials? Without authorization? This isn't a mall. This isn't a movie premiere with flexible entry. This is an Academy-governed event with more security than a presidential gala. So how did Meghan walk straight past the carpet, glide her way into the lobby, and then enter the main hall as though she belonged there? We will get to that. But before we do, something else happened. Something that set the entire night on fire. Leonardo DiCaprio saw her, and his face, according to multiple insiders, went from casual calm to sharp, unmistakable irritation in less than a second. Think about that for a moment. Leonardo DiCaprio is one of the calmest, most unbothered men in Hollywood. He doesn't involve himself in drama. He avoids conflict. He keeps to his circle. He protects his peace. But Meghan's appearance? That shook him. Why? Because this wasn't the first time he'd dealt with something like this. Oh no, far from it. Hollywood remembers patterns. Hollywood remembers energy. And Hollywood remembers every stunt pulled in every room that matters. But let's not go too deep yet. As Leonardo watched from across the room, something else happened. Something even more dramatic. Tom Cruise, who had been engaged in a conversation with two producers near the center of the ballroom, turned his attention toward the entrance. His expression was nothing like Leonardo's. It wasn't shock. It wasn't confusion. It was instant disapproval. The kind of look that says, absolutely not. Not here. Not tonight. Let's pause for a moment. Because this is where things get interesting. Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Cruise barely operate in the same social circles. They are both Hollywood titans. Yes, but their energy, their brand, their friendships? Completely different. They don't join forces. They don't intervene in the same drama. But on this night, they reacted the same way, at the same moment, toward the same person. And that tells you something. Something big was about to unfold. But what exactly was Meghan doing? What expression did she have? Was she aware of the stares? Was she pretending not to hear the whispers? She walked deeper into the room, confidently. Too confidently. As if nothing about the situation was unusual. As if this event were just another casual Hollywood soiree she had been invited to. Insiders would later say that her energy was performative, as though she wanted people to see her, as though the purpose of walking in wasn't to attend the event, but to disrupt it. And every step she took seemed to intensify the tension. By the time she reached the middle of the ballroom, celebrities who rarely looked nervous were shifting awkwardly, side-glancing, whispering, some turning away completely. Because Meghan wasn't just an uninvited guest. She was an uninvited guest at the Governor Awards, a place where the industry's most respected gatekeepers gather. And the room was not prepared to be hijacked by unexpected theatrics. Then something else happened. Something that made several people step back. Meghan smiled and began greeting people. She extended her hand. She leaned in for hugs. She acted like she belonged there more than the people who actually did. But the strangest part? Most people didn't know how to respond. Celebrities who could handle international press tours, awards campaigns, scandals, and global rumors were suddenly unsure of what facial expression to use. Should they smile back? Should they acknowledge her? Should they pretend they didn't see her? Every option seemed risky. And just as the room started to quietly panic, everything shifted sharply. Because Meghan turned toward Leonardo DiCaprio and walked in his direction. Audience question time. What do you think Leonardo did in that moment? Smile politely? Ignore her? Step away? None of the above. He stiffened. A small but visible reaction. A reaction caught by at least 3 insiders who later described it the same way. Leonardo locked up for a second, as if bracing himself. Before Meghan could reach him, Tom Cruise moved. Quickly, strategically, with purpose. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't relaxed. He wasn't performing. He was stepping in to stop something. Something he felt needed to be stopped. Why? Because he had seen this pattern before. Because he had a personal reason for being alarmed. Because Hollywood etiquette, the very thing the Governor Awards is built on, had just been broken in the most audacious way. But here's the part almost no one expected. The room, which had been buzzing with disbelief, suddenly fell completely silent. Not quiet. Silent. Every table, every conversation, every person, frozen. All eyes moved from Meghan to Leonardo to Tom. And that is the moment, the exact moment, where everything truly began. But before we get to the confrontation that would overshadow the entire 2025 ceremony, you need to understand something much deeper. This wasn't just about Meghan walking into a room she wasn't invited to. This was about timing. This was about context. This was about Hollywood's growing frustrations. This was about a pattern, one that many insiders claim had finally reached its breaking point. And the Governor Awards? That was the worst possible place for it to happen. But why now? Why this event? Why this night? You're about to find out. Because what happened next, the words exchanged, the reactions captured, the eruption of whispers, would not only shatter the room, but ignite one of the most explosive Hollywood controversies of the decade. And it all begins with the look Tom Cruise gave Meghan just before he opened his mouth. A look that said everything. You should not be here. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The night was moving smoothly, until the black SUV rolled up to the front of the Dolby Theater. If you've ever watched a Hollywood event unfold, you know the rhythm. Vehicles glide up in a steady, predictable pattern. Publicists signal. Assistants open doors. Stars step out in sync with the flashing of cameras. Everything is coordinated down to the second. It's a choreography, clean, polished, and almost militarily precise. But this SUV? It wasn't on the schedule. It wasn't part of the security manifest. And it didn't match the list of authorized vehicle plates for the 2025 Governor Awards. One guard actually stepped forward, lifting a hand slightly as if preparing to halt the driver before the doors even opened. But then the back passenger door swung wide, abruptly, brazenly, and for a split second, the energy around the entrance fractured. The first thing the photographers saw was a hand. A calculated, graceful hand emerging from the dim interior. then a silhouette, then a familiar face framed by carefully styled waves. Meghan Markle. And that single reveal was enough to make the closest camera operators physically jolt backward. Not because she was there, but because she wasn't supposed to be there. Not tonight. Not at this event. Not under any category of invited guest. One of the security guards murmured something into his earpiece, and two others stepped closer, not aggressively, but with that stiffened posture that says, "We did not anticipate this." And here's the part the audience needs to consider. Events like the Governor Awards have no margin for surprises. They're not like premieres or charity galas where last-minute names can be quietly squeezed in. This is a prestige-only event governed by the Academy, and the integrity of the list is ironclad. So again, how did she get past the checkpoint? Let's slow down the frame. As Meghan stands upright, smoothing the front of her gown, there's a noticeable pause from the dozens of onlookers stationed near the front doors. A few cameras lift, unsure whether to flash. Others hesitate, because getting a picture of an uninvited figure could create legal headaches. Publicists in sharp suits exchange looks. Assistants clutch clipboards tighter. Meghan steps forward anyway. Poised, calm, unapologetic. She walks as though she is the night's honoree. Here's the contradiction. Meghan is a master at commanding presence. Whether you love her or criticize her, you can't deny she knows how to create an entrance. And tonight, she deploys that skill with precision. Shoulders back, chin lifted, expression soft but confident. But confidence doesn't erase protocol. If anything, it made some insiders even more uneasy. As Meghan approaches the entrance, one security guard steps lightly into her path, not blocking her, but definitely signaling that something isn't aligning. "Good evening, ma'am. May I see your—" But she doesn't let him finish. She places a hand briefly on his forearm, not forcefully, but with the kind of passive authority that suggests she's accustomed to being waved through. "I'm here as a guest," she says, voice warm, smooth, and familiar. Audience question. If someone said that at an event you were guarding, but their name wasn't on your list, what would you do? The guard hesitates. Because here's the problem with high-profile figures. The consequences of misjudgment are enormous. If you stop someone who actually is supposed to be inside, you risk being reprimanded, or worse, becoming the next viral humiliation. And Meghan is counting on that. Of course, the guard says cautiously, glancing at his colleague for confirmation he doesn't have. Right this way. And that tiny slice of hesitation was all she needed. Meghan steps past the threshold, through the glass doors, into the lobby, unchallenged, unverified, uninvited. Inside the lobby, staff members, greeters, ushers, event managers, all freeze momentarily, then quickly recover. Hollywood etiquette. Always appear composed, even when the unexpected barges in. She moves through them like water gliding around stones. No pauses, no check-in table, no credential scan, no pause for the protocol staff to confirm her access. Every step she takes is an assertion, "I belong here. Don't question me." And that psychological momentum works. For a moment. But only for a moment. Because one usher, a young woman holding an iPad with the official digital guest list, lifts her gaze and visibly blanches. She scrolls. Scrolls again. Scrolls faster. Her eyebrows knit together. She looks up. Meghan is already walking past her. Inside the ballroom. Let's pause here, because this is where the fabric of the night begins to pull apart. Up until now, everything could still be explained away. Maybe the guard missed her name. Maybe the wrong list was pulled. Maybe someone forgot to update the guest database. But once Meghan stepped through the ballroom archway, all rational explanations evaporated. Because at that exact moment, nearly a dozen heads turned. Not randomly, not coincidentally, but sharply, deliberately, and with the same stunned reaction. You know why? Because every person in that room knew the guest list by heart. The Governor Awards is the kind of event where you know who's coming before they arrive. Publicists rehearse names. Coordinators memorize seating arrangements. Attendees receive minute-by-minute breakdowns of where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, and who they're expected to interact with. Surprises simply do not exist. So when Meghan appeared, the first thought wasn't, "Look, Meghan Markle is here." The first thought was, "Who let her in?" At this point, the audience should ask themselves, what would you do if you walked into a room full of the biggest names in Hollywood? knowing you weren't supposed to be there? Would you stand quietly in the back, find your seat discreetly, blend in, and hope no one noticed? Meghan does none of that. She enters as if she is the main character of the evening. Her posture shifts subtly. Shoulders angled forward just slightly, chin turned at an upward tilt, a smile forming that seems tailored for photography, even though no cameras are at her side now. She scans the room, not with timid uncertainty, but with an evaluative gaze, like someone surveying property they're considering purchasing. And that's when the whispers begin. Soft at first, then steadily louder. Is she on the list? I thought she wasn't invited. Why is she here? Oh God, this is going to be a thing. Who's handling this? She came anyway? Bull. Every table. Every cluster. Every corner. And here's the twist. Meghan hears these whispers. She's not oblivious. She's not unaware. Her smile falters for a single breath, barely noticeable, before she restores it. Brighter this time, almost defiantly. She walks deeper into the room, toward the center, toward the spotlight, toward the cluster of nominees, honorees, directors, and megastars. Not away from them, toward them. And that is when the first major reaction happens. Not Tom Cruise. Not Leonardo DiCaprio. Not yet. The first intense reaction comes from a table near the front. A pair of studio executives who exchange a look so fast, so sharp, you'd think they were signaling emergency evacuation. One of them reaches for his phone, sliding it under the tablecloth. A discreet text. A quick alert. Because they know what is about to happen, and they know the Academy will not be pleased. Meghan continues walking. And this is where the audience needs to pay very close attention. Someone tries to intercept her. A woman in a sleek black dress, one of the senior event managers, moves quickly from the side of the room. She's polite, smiling, hands clasped professionally. She steps into Meghan's path. Mrs. Markle, she begins. But she is cut off. I'm just heading in, Meghan replies breezily, brushing past her. Audience question. Have you ever watched someone bypass rules so confidently that everyone around them becomes too stunned to stop them? That's exactly what happens. The event manager hesitates. She has authority, but not celebrity-level authority. And in Hollywood, that distinction can freeze even the most seasoned professional. Which brings us to the moment everything shifts. Leonardo DiCaprio notices her. He wasn't looking for her. He wasn't scanning the entrance. He wasn't even thinking about her. But when she walked into his line of sight, something in his expression changed instantly. You know how some people get loud when they're angry? Leonardo does not. His anger lives in silence, in tightened brows, a firm jawline, and a sudden stillness in his posture. He stops talking mid-sentence. His eyes stay fixed on Meghan. His expression darkens. One of his table mates follows his gaze. Oh, the person murmurs under their breath. This is not good. And across the room, as if connected by some invisible string of shared irritation, Tom Cruise turns his head as well. Tom, unlike Leonardo, doesn't freeze. His reaction is immediate, active, and unmistakably disapproving. A small exhale, a narrow-eyed scan, a shift in stance, shoulders squared, jaw clenched. Then he begins moving. Slow, measured, intentional, not toward his seat, not toward the stage, toward her, because in his mind, someone needs to handle this. And apparently, on this night, that someone is him. But before he reaches her, before Leonardo stands, before the whispers turn into full, silent chaos, something else happens. Meghan lifts her chin, scans the room, spots Leonardo, and begins walking straight toward him. And that's where the night begins to break open. Because Leonardo isn't standing yet. Tom isn't close enough to intervene. Security hasn't been notified. The Academy hasn't moved. Publicists haven't reacted. But something big is about to happen. Something that will later define this night in every headline, every podcast, every insider commentary. And it all starts in the next chapter with one single, explosive moment. But what happened when Meghan reached Leonardo's table would change everything. And no one saw it coming. There's a word people kept whispering that night. A word you don't usually hear at glamorous Hollywood events. A word that doesn't belong among shimmering gowns, diamond jewelry, velvet ropes, and vintage champagne. The word was how. Not who. Not why. Not what is she wearing. Just how. How did Meghan Markle, a figure permanently welded to controversy, a former royal glued to public scrutiny, a woman who had been intentionally distanced from Hollywood's elite circles for months, walked straight into one of the most controlled, heavily vetted, invitation-only ceremonies of the entire awards season. Let's break this down, because this chapter isn't just about Meghan appearing at the Governor Awards. This chapter is about the list that everyone respects, the list that everyone fears, the list that no one, absolutely no one, gets on accidentally. The Governor Awards guest list is one of the most tightly guarded documents in the industry. It's controlled directly by the Academy. It's pre-approved by studio heads, veteran producers, corporate partners, and event security weeks in advance. To be on the list, you must be nominated for an honorary award, present an award, work closely with the Academy, be a confirmed +1 of one of those categories, or be specifically invited by a major studio or Academy board member. Everyone else, they get politely declined. No exceptions, no loopholes, no surprises. And yet, Meghan Markle was inside. Let's rewind the clock 10 hours before the event. As insiders later revealed, the Academy's digital guest database had been finalized early that morning. There were 406 names. Every single one had been verified 3 different ways. Cross-checked, tagged, confirmed. Personal publicists had checked and double-checked. Security had run the names through multiple systems. Meghan Markle was not one of them. She had not been invited. She had not been approved. She had not been added as a +1. She had not been registered by any studio or executive. In fact, one of the Academy coordinators stated anonymously, there was absolutely no category under which Meghan Markle qualified to be at the 2025 Governor Awards. None. So again, how did she get in? The answer is a twist of Hollywood irony. A producer, whose name is still being debated, had apparently sent a casual message to Meghan's team months earlier regarding a possible collaboration concept. Nothing official. Nothing concrete. Nothing connected to the awards. But someone, somewhere, decided to manipulate that message. A forwarded text. A half-told story. A conveniently ambiguous phrase. And that tiny spark was enough to ignite what came next. According to insiders, Meghan's team interpreted the message as a soft welcome into the producer's circle and possibly into the award season sphere. But the producer never actually invited her. Not in writing. Not verbally. Not through any formal channel. Now, here's the important thing the audience must understand. Hollywood thrives on ambiguity. People love to leave things implied. People love to communicate through suggestive language. But even in that murky world, the Governor Awards remains an exception. There is no implied invitation. If you are supposed to be there, you know. If you are not supposed to be there, everyone else knows. But someone in Meghan's orbit either misunderstood the situation or decided to take advantage of the confusion. Now fast forward to the lobby, where the staff member with the iPad guest list was still scrolling frantically. At this point, one of the assistant coordinators stepped up behind her and asked quietly, "What's wrong?" "She's not here," the iPad holder whispered. "I checked twice." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Meghan Markle is not on the list. But she's right there." "I know. So what do we do?" The coordinator glanced toward the entrance of the ballroom, where Meghan had just disappeared inside. "We need to alert the floor manager." But by the time they sent the alert, by the time the manager started moving, by the time security got prepared, Meghan had already done the one thing nobody anticipated. She blended in. Not quietly, not gracefully, but with the confidence of someone who wanted to be noticed. Because here's the contradiction that set the entire night on edge. Meghan wasn't trying to hide her presence. She wanted to be seen. Every step, every greeting, every glance toward the elite tables. She radiated intention. As one insider confessed, she walked in like she was auditioning to play herself in a movie. Now let's step inside the ballroom again. The whispering had grown into a steady hum by now. Not loud, not chaotic, just persistent, continuous, relentless. Did someone invite her? No, she wasn't on the list. "I heard she's here with someone." "With who?" "No idea. No one claims her." She crashed it. She actually crashed the Governor Awards. My God. At that moment, a young studio assistant texted her boss. "She's here. The Duchess. The one we didn't invite." Her boss texted back instantly. "Handle it quietly." But how do you handle something quietly When the entire room is full of Oscar winners watching a guest who shouldn't be there walk deeper and deeper into their midst. Meanwhile, across the room, Tom Cruise's initial reaction was evolving from confusion to irritation. He wasn't alone. Several senior Academy members had noticed Meghan by now. Each expression told the same story. This is going to be a problem. Let's dissect the psychology here. Hollywood is a place built on hierarchy. You enter events based on status, based on career, based on contribution, and anything that disrupts that hierarchy, even slightly, creates immediate tension. Meghan represented a disruption, not because of her past roles, not because of her former royal status, not because of her fame, but because she didn't follow the rules everyone else followed. She walked into a space where the stakes were highest, where protocol mattered most, where reputations were guarded like gold, and acted as though she were entitled to it. Here's where Meghan's team made their biggest miscalculation. They believed that confidence could substitute for credentials. That if she walked in with enough grace, enough poise, enough presence, someone would assume she belonged. But this was not a room full of Instagram influencers or fan convention organizers. This was the Academy. These were people who built Hollywood. People who dedicated decades to earning their space at this table. People who cared deeply about the integrity of the craft. Meghan's arrival wasn't just unexpected. It was perceived as disrespectful. One Academy member was overheard muttering, "She doesn't respect our industry. She thinks she can just appear anywhere she wants." And Leonardo DiCaprio, he was thinking something along the same lines. But for reasons we'll explore later, reasons far more personal, far more layered, and far more tied to previous interactions. Let's focus now on the moment the guest list controversy fully erupted. 3 staff members gathered near the stage, 2 from the Academy and 1 from the Dolby team. "She can't be in here," one said. "We know," another replied. "Do we remove her?" "Not yet. Not until we understand who let her in." And this is where the story gets even more twisted. Somewhere in this confusion, someone came up with a theory, a bad theory, but one that spread like wildfire. Maybe she's a surprise guest of a nominee. But within minutes, that theory collapsed. Because one nominee after another made it clear they had nothing to do with her. "She's definitely not with us. She's not at my table. No idea why she's here. She wasn't invited." By now, the Academy leadership was being alerted. Texts, whispers, quick glances toward the audience. But Meghan kept walking. She hadn't found Leonardo yet. She hadn't seen Tom. She hadn't had her first confrontation. She was still in the early stages of the night. Just entering, just taking in the room, just warming up to the moment she clearly intended to own. And then something happened that intensified everything. A producer, the one whose message had allegedly sparked this entire misunderstanding, walked in. And when he saw Meghan, his face went sheet white. He froze, fully froze, because he knew exactly what everyone else didn't know. He had not invited her. And now this misunderstanding, this tiny spark of miscommunication, had spiraled into a public, uncontrollable firestorm. He whispered to the person beside him, "She shouldn't be here." The person asked, "Then why is she?" The producer shook his head. "No idea. But this is going to be ugly." And it was. Because within seconds, Leonardo DiCaprio turned from his table. Tom Cruise took a step forward. Security approached the perimeter. And Meghan? She was still moving, still smiling, still acting as though everything was going perfectly according to plan. But what she did next would stop the room cold, and would push the night into full crisis. Because Meghan finally saw him. Leonardo. And she walked straight toward him. That moment, the approach, was the spark that lit the explosion. But what happened when she reached his table? That would send shockwaves through the entire event, and destroy the quiet, controlled elegance of the Governor Awards. But what came next would shake Hollywood, and it was only the beginning. There are certain people in Hollywood who don't need to speak to be understood. Leonardo DiCaprio is one of them. When Leonardo reacts to something, the room reacts with him. Not because he demands it, not because he craves attention, but because he carries a kind of gravitational pull, the quiet authority of a man who has spent more than 3 decades defining what Hollywood excellence looks like. So when Meghan Markle walked toward his table, every eye that wasn't already on her shifted toward him. Because Leonardo didn't just notice her. He felt her presence. And he responded in a way that told the entire room, something isn't right. But let's not jump ahead. Let's slow the moment down to its slowest frame. Let's capture every detail, every breath, every flicker of expression, because this is where the night genuinely turns. The ballroom is glowing under warm amber lights. The stage is set with velvet drapes. The audience murmurs in quiet anticipation of the ceremony's opening remarks. Most people are mid-conversation, laughing politely, sipping champagne, leaning into familiar faces. Leonardo sits at a round table near the front. He's relaxed, calm, focused. He's dressed in a classic black tuxedo, simple but striking. He's listening to a director tell a story about a film they want to produce next year. Then the atmosphere shifts, not dramatically, not loudly, but noticeably. A subtle gravity pulls at the edges of the room. The conversation around him begins to fade. The laughter thins. The hum of chatter softens. It's as if the energy in the ballroom tilts slightly toward the entrance. Leonardo senses it. He doesn't stop talking, but his eyes blink once, slowly. The blink of a man whose instincts just whispered, "Pay attention." Then, that moment, the moment people would later describe with phrases like, "You had to see his face," and "he looked genuinely shocked," happens. From across the ballroom, he sees her, Meghan Markle, walking directly toward him, and Leonardo DiCaprio freezes. Not dramatically, not theatrically, but unmistakably. A stillness settles over him, like a man instantly calculating the consequences of what he's witnessing. Audience question: have you ever had a moment where you instantly recognized something was about to become a problem before it even happened? That was Leonardo. His eyebrows draw together, tightly. His lips part just slightly, not into a smile, but into a puzzled, almost irritated line. His shoulders rise, subtle tension pulling into his posture. He leans forward 1 inch. A micro-movement that says, "What is she doing here?" One of his tablemates, an Oscar-nominated actress, follows his gaze. Her expression changes too. "Oh no," she mutters under her breath, so quietly that only the person sitting next to her can hear. But that's the thing about Hollywood whispers. Even the quiet ones travel. By now, Meghan is halfway across the room. Everyone is watching. Everyone is waiting. Everyone is bracing. Because celebrities are trained to scan rooms, to read energy, to detect shifts in social temperature. And right now, the room is ice cold. Leonardo turns his head ever so slightly toward his publicist, seated 2 chairs down. She leans forward instinctively. "What's wrong?" she whispers. Leonardo doesn't answer immediately. His jaw tightens. He inhales sharply through his nose, not in anger, but in a kind of restrained disbelief. Finally, he says quietly, "She shouldn't be here." His publicist looks in the same direction, sees Meghan, and her face drains of color. "Oh my God," she whispers. "Oh no." Now, here's where the psychology of the moment gets fascinating. Leonardo DiCaprio is not someone who reacts publicly to drama. He avoids feuds, ignores scandals, sidesteps controversy. But this situation, this broke through his calm. Why? Because Leonardo is an Academy veteran. He respects the Oscars, the Governor Awards, the tradition, the rules, the integrity of it all. He shows up on time. He follows the seating arrangements. He treats the event with reverence. So seeing someone, anyone, walk into this sacred space uninvited, that was the equivalent of someone casually strolling onto the set of a Spielberg film without clearance. It was disrespect, not just to him, not just to the guests, but to the institution. But there's another layer here, deeper, older, unspoken. Leonardo had witnessed Meghan perform similar entry tactics before. Not exactly like this, not as publicly, but enough to recognize the pattern. Someone leveraging fame, influence, image, public attention. Someone inserting themselves into circles without invitation. So this wasn't just shock. It was déjà vu, and Leonardo was done with it. As Meghan approached, Leonardo's instinct wasn't to smile politely. It was to stand, not out of respect, but out of boundary setting. But before he could rise, something else happened. Tom Cruise stood up first. But we'll get to that next chapter. Let's remain in this moment, Leonardo's moment, because this is where his internal shift turns external. Meghan is now only 10 steps away. Her smile is luminous. Her posture is regal. Her energy is bold. She's walking as if the room is hers. Leonardo sees her approaching, and something inside him snaps slightly. not in anger, but in resolve. He leans back in his chair. His expression hardens. He turns his head fully toward her. No longer just glancing, but locking eyes with the approaching disruption. Audience question: have you ever tried to be polite to someone, and they kept pushing until politeness simply wasn't possible anymore? That was Leonardo at this exact second. 5 more steps. 4. 3. The table behind him goes silent. The row behind that follows suit. Then the row behind that. A domino effect of tension. By the time Meghan reaches Leonardo's table, the entire left half of the ballroom is dead silent. Watching, waiting, terrified to blink. Meghan stops in front of Leonardo. She tilts her head with a polished, camera-ready smile. "Leonardo," she says, as if greeting an old friend. "It's been too long." Leonardo does not return the smile. Instead, he lifts his eyebrows slightly, a gesture of disbelief, and his lips form a tight, controlled line. Then, quietly but firmly, he says, "What are you doing here?" The room hears it. Not clearly, but enough. A ripple moves through the air. Meghan laughs softly, brushing a loose curl behind her ear. "Oh, I'm here as a guest," she says lightly. "I was invited." Leonardo stares at her. Not blinking, not nodding, not smiling, just staring. He tilts his head. His jaw works slowly. He studies her, the way someone studies an unexpected intruder. Then he says one single sentence. The sentence that would later dominate every whisper, every recap, every leaked report from that night. "No, you weren't." Meghan freezes. Just a flicker, so fast that nobody but those closest to her would have caught it. Her smile falters by a millimeter. Her eyes shift. Her breath catches. It's the first sign, the very first, that she's rattled. But she adjusts quickly, lifting her chin and straightening her shoulders. "Of course I was," she says. "I'm with," and she names the producer. The one whose vague message months ago had snowballed into this disaster. Leonardo's reaction is instant. He shakes his head slowly, purposefully, firmly. "No," he says. "You weren't." He repeats the sentence, each repetition colder than the last. "You were not invited." 6 words that slam into the room like a hammer. Meghan's expression tightens, barely, but enough for Leonardo to see it. But Leonardo doesn't break eye contact. He doesn't offer comfort. He doesn't soften. He simply holds the boundary. Then one of Leonardo's tablemates, a respected director, leans slightly toward Meghan and says, half whispering, half warning, "You need to talk to the organizers. Not us." Translation: leave. Now, before this becomes worse. The air is suffocating at this point. Tense, heavy, unstable. Everyone knows the moment is seconds away from exploding. But the explosion doesn't come from Leonardo. It comes from behind her. Because Tom Cruise has arrived. He steps up beside Meghan. Not smiling. Not polite. Not measured. His presence is sharp, direct, confrontational. And he says something that turns the temperature of the room from icy to freezing. But that belongs to the next chapter. Because what Tom Cruise said next would escalate the situation beyond anything the Governor Awards had ever seen. And it would push the night into irreversible chaos. But what Tom said, and how Meghan reacted, would change the entire trajectory of the evening. And no one was prepared for it. If Leonardo DiCaprio's reaction shook the room, Tom Cruise's presence cracked it wide open. There are people in Hollywood who carry influence. There are people who carry popularity. And then there are people who carry command. Tom Cruise belongs firmly in the third category. When he moves, people follow. When he speaks, people listen. When he disapproves, the room vibrates. So imagine the atmosphere when Tom Cruise, a man known for his discipline, his respect for industry tradition, and his decisive nature, stepped forward with a glare that could have stopped a charging bull. Let's return to the exact second this happened. Leonardo had just said the sentence that cut through the ballroom like a blade. "You were not invited." The entire room felt the impact. Some guests inhaled sharply. Some stiffened. Some exchanged wide-eyed glances. Some froze entirely. Meghan was still standing there, frozen between indignation and confusion. Then, a shadow appeared behind her. A figure. Tall. Sharp suit. Purposeful stride. Tom Cruise. And the timing of his arrival wasn't coincidence. He had been watching. He had been assessing. And he had just seen the line cross from awkward to unacceptable. Audience question: Have you ever seen someone walk into a situation like they were born to handle conflict? Like they weren't just entering, they were taking control? That is exactly what Tom exuded as he stepped toward Meghan. His walk was determined but controlled. His eyes were fixed, not on Leonardo, not on the crowd, but directly on Meghan. He came to intervene, and he wasn't going to be gentle about it. Let's slow this down to the millisecond level. Tom stops right beside Meghan, but not close enough to invade her space. Just close enough to make a statement. This stops now. Meghan, sensing someone behind her, turns slightly. Her expression shifts the second she recognizes him. "Oh, Tom," she says, voice rising with relief, surprise, and something else. Expectation. Because in Meghan's mind, Tom Cruise is not just a superstar. He is a figure who could anchor her legitimacy. A man whose presence might soften the situation. A man whose support, or even neutral acknowledgement, could turn the energy back in her favor. But Tom Cruise does not smile. He does not nod. He does not greet her. He folds his hands calmly in front of him, tilts his head slightly, and lets out a long, slow exhale. The exhale of someone preparing to say something difficult, stern, and necessary. He begins with her name. Meghan. Simple. Firm. Not warm. Not angry. Just enough to signal authority. The way a teacher says the name of a student who just pushed the boundary too far. Meghan straightens, trying to pull her energy back into confidence. "Yes," she replies, her smile tightening. Tom lowers his voice, not to hide his words, but to give them weight. A low voice can be more powerful than a shouted sentence. And tonight, Tom understands that. What are you doing? Not how are you? Not good to see you. Not lovely evening, isn't it? No pleasantries. No buffer. Just a cold, crisp question. Meghan blinks rapidly. "I'm here for the awards," she says. "I was invited." Tom cuts in gently, but firmly. "No, you weren't." 3 words. Even more powerful than Leonardo's earlier insistence. Because Leonardo said it in disbelief. Tom says it in certainty. The sound of air leaving Meghan's lungs is quiet, but it's there. Tom continues, his voice still calm, but unmistakably stern. "This is a closed event. You know that." Meghan opens her mouth to respond, to defend herself, but Tom raises a single hand. Not aggressively, not rudely, just enough to stop her words without escalating the tone. "You can't be here," he says. "This isn't your event." At this point, you could have heard a pin drop on a velvet carpet. The room is suspended in absolute silence. Even the waitstaff froze. Nobody inhaled. Nobody whispered. Nobody dared move. Because Tom Cruise doesn't raise his voice often. But when he steps into a confrontation like this, his voice becomes the center of gravity. Meghan tries again. "I was told." "No," Tom says, his tone flatter now. "You weren't." And here's where the emotional weight of the moment becomes extraordinary. Most celebrities, when confronted like this, would lower their eyes. Step back. Apologize. Leave gracefully. But Meghan? She doubles down. Her chin lifts. Her shoulders square. Her voice becomes syrupy, diplomatic, defensive all at once. "I'm here with a producer," she insists. He said. Tom nods sharply. "Yes, we're aware. And he just made it very clear you weren't invited." There it is. The confirmation. The collapse of her last excuse. The truth dropping in the middle of the ballroom like a hammer. Meghan's breath wavers. Her lips part. Her eyes flicker. Not with guilt, but with something far more volatile. Embarrassment. A powerful, destabilizing embarrassment. Because this is happening publicly. In front of Leonardo. In front of every A-lister who matters. In front of Academy members who will discuss this moment for years. Let's pause and examine Tom's psychology here. Tom Cruise is someone who respects order, rules, professionalism, preparation, boundaries. This wasn't about Meghan as a person. This was about the violation of the environment he considers sacred. And he wasn't about to let the night be derailed. He takes one step closer, just one, making sure the message cannot be misconstrued. "You need to talk to security," he says. Meghan's eyes widen. "Why?" she asks, trying to shift into indignation. "I haven't done anything wrong." Tom's expression hardens. "You're not cleared," he replies. "And you can't enter this room without clearance." Simple, unshakable, irrefutable. Meghan glances around the room, searching desperately for support. Anyone, a familiar face, a sympathetic expression. a nod of validation. But she finds none. Instead, she sees only discomfort. Awkward silence. Averted gazes. Tense posture. Everyone knows what the rules are. Everyone knows she broke them. Everyone knows Tom is right. Meghan swallows. She shifts her weight. She tightens her grip on her clutch. Her fingers tremble slightly, a tremor quickly hidden. For the first time all night, she seems uncertain. Tom doesn't soften. Let's handle this quietly, he says, before more people notice. That line, that exact line, is what sends the entire room into silent uproar. Because everyone already noticed. And Meghan knows it. Tom, she finally says, trying to regain her ground. There has clearly been a misunderstanding. Tom shakes his head. There hasn't, he says. You need to step outside. Meghan's breath catches again. Outside. She repeats, her voice shrinking. As in leave? Tom doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. Silence is the answer. Leonardo remains seated, watching the moment unfold with a quiet, affirming intensity. And the room remains stuck in this suspended, electric stillness. But then, from somewhere near the back, someone whispers the words that send another ripple of tension through the crowd. Security is coming. Meghan hears it. Her shoulders stiffen. Tom hears it. His posture straightens. Leonardo hears it. His jaw clenches. And the guests hear it. A collective, internal gasp. Because now the situation has crossed the line from awkwardness to formality, to enforcement. This is no longer a misunderstanding. This is no longer a negotiation. This is a removal. But before security reaches her, Meghan does something no one expects. She makes a bold, defiant choice. A move designed to flip the narrative, reclaim control, and challenge the authority standing in front of her. And that choice, that moment, that sudden, sharp escalation, would leave the room shaken and set the stage for the explosive confrontation still to come. But what Meghan said next, the sentence she delivered in a trembling but determined voice, would ignite the next stage of the drama. And no one in Hollywood would forget it. There are silences. And then there are silences that swallow an entire room. The kind of silence where time seems to stumble. Where breaths get caught halfway up the throat. Where every sound, every clink of a glass, every shuffle of a heel, every nervous swallow, becomes painfully loud. That was the silence that hit the Governor Awards the moment Meghan Markle lifted her chin and prepared to respond to Tom Cruise. It didn't spread gradually. It didn't ripple in slow waves. It slammed into the room. Instantly. Completely. Irreversibly. To understand how intense it was, you need to visualize the layout of the ballroom at that exact second. Hundreds of attendees, clustered around perfectly curated round tables, crisp white linens, crystal glasses, diamond earrings catching the light, golden Oscar-themed centerpieces, laughter moments earlier, warmth moments earlier, comfort moments earlier. Now, absolute paralysis. The stage lights dimmed slightly, casting long shadows that stretched across the room. Those shadows seemed to tighten around the crowd, framing the moment with dramatic stillness. Something monumental had shifted. Let's freeze the frame. Meghan stands between Tom Cruise and Leonardo DiCaprio. Her shoulders are squared, but the tension in her posture betrays the pressure she's under. Her fingers tighten around her clutch, knuckles widening. Tom stands firm, jaw clenched, eyebrows drawn in a sharp V of authority. Leonardo remains seated, but his expression is carved with icy focus. The audience, everyone from Oscar-winning actors to studio executives, watches with a combination of fascination, discomfort, and anxiety. Because they all know one thing. Someone is about to cross a line. But who? And how badly? Let's continue the moment. Tom Cruise has just said the most devastating sentence of the night. You need to step outside. The kind of sentence that feels final, undeniable, public, unavoidable. A sentence that leaves no room for negotiation. And Meghan knows it. For the first time all night, she is visibly shaken. Her voice trembles. Her stance falters. Her eyes dart around the room, scanning faces, hunting for an ally. But no one moves. No one offers her a seat. No one extends a reassuring hand. No one looks eager to share her burden. It's as if the crowd collectively stepped back. Emotionally, socially, politically. Because no one wants to be dragged into whatever firestorm is about to ignite. Meghan finally finds her voice. Tom, she says, soft but trembling. This is a misunderstanding. I wouldn't just show up without being welcomed. Tom doesn't fold. He doesn't soften. He doesn't even blink. There was no welcome, he replies flatly. A message is not an invitation. The room tightens again. Meghan inhales sharply, a shallow breath that sounds more like a gasp. She looks at Leonardo this time, desperate. Leo, she says, you and I both know. Leonardo cuts her off, politely, calmly, but with the finality of a door closing. No, he says, don't involve me. Those 4 words echo across the ballroom. You could practically feel the emotional bruise forming. Meghan's lips part. Her eyes widen. She stands frozen, suspended in humiliation. And the room reacts internally. This is getting worse. This is spiraling. Somebody step in. Somebody stop it. But nobody does. Because in Hollywood, if you're not invited, if you're not welcome, nobody risks being the one who tries to save you. Here's where the tension reaches its breaking point. Meghan, cornered, embarrassed, exposed, makes a split-second decision. A bold decision. A risky decision. A decision driven by desperation and pride. She raises her voice. Not a scream, not a shout, but loud enough for the nearest 5 tables to hear. I didn't sneak in. She declares, voice cracking slightly. I was told I could be here. I have every right. Tom steps forward. A single, firm step. And the energy hits the crowd like a shockwave. Stop, he says. One word, delivered with precision. It slices through the air. Meghan freezes mid-sentence. Why did Tom's command hit so hard? Because Tom Cruise never uses that tone publicly. The tone of a man who has lost patience. The tone of a man who sees the integrity of the night slipping away. His voice drops lower, more controlled, more chilling. You are disrupting this event, he says. This night is not about you. It is not your platform. It is not your stage. The words sting. Even people far from the confrontation wince. Meghan's face cracks for half a second. Her composure flickers. Her eyes glaze with a mix of embarrassment and outrage. But then she snaps. Emotion rushing in. Ego rushing in. Fear rushing in. She raises her chin defiantly. I was invited, she insists, voice small but stubborn. I don't need your permission. Now the room isn't just silent. The room is stunned. Audience question, have you ever watched someone double down on the wrong choice, and you knew it was the wrong choice, and you could do nothing to stop them? That's every person in that ballroom right now. Leonardo finally stands. Slowly, deliberately, with the gravity of a man who hates confrontation, but hates disrespect even more. He steps forward. His expression is unreadable, but his intention is unmistakable. Meghan, he says, stop trying to make this something it isn't. His voice is calm, level, measured, but it's the tone of a man who has reached his limit. You were not invited, he repeats, emphasizing each word. You know it. We know it. Everyone here knows it. Meghan's breath catches again. Her eyes burn with humiliation. Her fingers tremble. The entire ballroom seems to lean in. Then Tom adds the final blow. Security has been notified. There it is. The escalation no one wanted. The escalation everyone feared. The escalation that would turn a quiet disruption into a public spectacle. Meghan's eyes widen. What? She whispers. You called. Tom nods. They're already on their way. And then, it happens. A moment so subtle, yet so powerful it changes the emotional temperature of the entire ballroom. Meghan's mask breaks. Her smile crumbles. Her voice collapses. Her posture falters. For a second, a single second, she looks lost. Not polished. Not controlled. Not composed. Just lost. A woman who had walked into a room full of Hollywood royalty expecting to assert her presence, now facing the crushing reality that she wasn't wanted. And then, the doors at the back of the ballroom open. 2 security officers step inside, dressed in black, calm, professional, focused. The gasps are nearly audible. The tension becomes suffocating. Meghan turns, eyes wide, mouth parted, and sees them walking toward her. She stiffens. Her breathing quickens. Tom steps back slightly. Leonardo watches quietly. The crowd braces. No one moves. No one speaks. No one dares intervene. Then someone, no one knows who, whispers from a table near the back. Oh my God, they're going to escort her out. The whisper spreads like wildfire. And Meghan hears it. Her face drains of color. Her lips tremble. Meghan Markle, the woman who walked in confidently, commandingly, boldly. Now stands on the brink of being publicly removed. But just before security reaches her, just before the situation erupts into irreversible humiliation, just before the room witnesses a removal that will overshadow the entire awards night, Meghan makes one last, desperate move. A move no one saw coming. A move that would shock the entire room. A move that would flip the tension into outright chaos. But what she did next would set the stage for the most explosive moment of the night. And everything that followed would spiral from this exact second. She had walked in with confidence. She had brushed past protocol. She had defied the unwritten rules of the Governor Awards. And now, Meghan Markle was about to make a move that would shock even the most seasoned Hollywood veterans in the room. Her boldness was not born of arrogance alone. It was born of desperation, strategy, and a deep awareness of optics. By this point, the ballroom was a pressure cooker of tension. Leonardo DiCaprio had confronted her. Tom Cruise had stepped in. Security had started moving toward her. Guests were watching every flicker of her expression, every micro-movement of her posture. But Meghan, standing in the eye of the storm, did something unexpected. She took a step forward. Just one deliberate step. And then another. Her heels clicked against the polished hardwood floor like a metronome, each sound amplifying the intensity in the room. A subtle announcement to everyone that the Duchess of Sussex was no longer going to be passive. She was no longer going to be a silent figure in the corner. She was taking charge of the narrative, or at least attempting to. Audience question: have you ever watched someone walk straight into a storm they themselves created, fully aware of the chaos that would follow? That's what Meghan did. She aimed for the center of the room, for the cluster of A-listers, producers, and industry decision-makers, the people whose attention mattered most, the people who could define her relevance, validate her presence, or utterly dismiss her in seconds. And she wanted to confront them all. Her approach was precise, calculated. She made eye contact with several tables as she passed, nodding politely, smiling, almost performing an aura of legitimacy. But she had a target. Her gaze locked on Leonardo DiCaprio. Every step closer to him sent waves of nervous energy through the room. Even the servers, carefully carrying trays of champagne, hesitated, unsure whether to continue their route or retreat. Everyone was watching the interaction that had already become the center of the night's unofficial drama. Then came the first mistake. Instead of maintaining composure, instead of exiting quietly, taking the high road, she reached out, extending her hand toward Leonardo as if greeting an old friend. "Leo," she said warmly, her smile wide, carefully curated for optics and cameras alike. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Leonardo's reaction was subtle but seismic. He did not move to shake her hand. He did not offer a polite smile. Instead, he leaned back slightly, the faintest of recoils, and shook his head almost imperceptibly. The silence was deafening. Audience question: what would you do if someone you didn't want to engage with approached you in a crowded room, where every eye was on both of you? Meghan's eyes flicked to Tom Cruise. He was standing a few steps away, body angled slightly toward her. Not confrontational, but ready to act. Tom had already made it clear. This behavior was unacceptable. It was disruptive, and he would enforce the boundaries if she did not respect them. But Meghan, sensing the pressure, made a split-second decision. She ignored the subtle cues of disapproval. She ignored the tightening energy of the crowd. She ignored the faint tension radiating from Leonardo's jaw and the resolute focus in Tom's eyes. Instead, she spoke. Her voice was soft, but deliberate. "I just wanted to greet you," she said to Leonardo, almost charmingly. It's been a long time. But the charm did not land. Leonardo's expression darkened. His lips pressed into a thin line. His eyes narrowed, and he took a deep, slow breath. The type of breath that tells a room, "I am about to enforce boundaries." By this point, whispers had started spreading across the tables. Guests exchanged glances. A few muttered to their neighbors, "This is going to get messy." Others simply stared, frozen, unsure whether to intervene or observe. Meghan's next move would seal the room's reaction. She stepped even closer. Closer to Leonardo. Closer to the line. Closer to the point of no return. Then, as if rehearsing for a public scene, she raised her hand slightly, not threatening, not demanding, but commanding attention, and addressed the group around her. "Hello, everyone. "I hope you're enjoying the evening," she said brightly. "I'm thrilled to be here." The murmurs turned into audible gasps. People shifted in their seats. Glasses paused midair. Even the servers halted, unsure where to place their trays. She had just amplified the disruption, not through confrontation, not through loud defiance, but through presence. By claiming space in this way, Meghan transformed a quiet protocol violation into a spectacle. Her body language, her voice, her poise, everything communicated, "I belong here," even if no one agreed. But the most critical reaction was yet to come. Leonardo leaned forward slightly, just enough for Meghan to notice the change in his posture. It was the first indication that he was about to escalate beyond silent disapproval. Tom Cruise shifted his weight, signaling to security without even speaking. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture, but anyone watching carefully would recognize it. The situation was about to be formally addressed. Meghan, sensing the tightening grip of scrutiny, tried to regain control. She smiled. She laughed lightly. She made eye contact with a few A-listers, hoping to earn sympathy. She tried charm. She tried familiarity. She tried subtle intimidation. But the room was not hers. The energy she tried to command resisted her, and the tension in the air was palpable, electric, like a storm about to break. Then came the defining moment of her bold move. She glanced at Leonardo again. Her steps slowed. Her voice took on a playful, almost persuasive tone.